Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
So a big warm welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where this week we're reporting live from Dynatrace Perform in Las Vegas, which began with Dave Anderson performing his own rendition of Ice Ice Baby by Vanilla Ice. But the lyrics were changed to Full Stack Baby. And I have to say it was one of the best entrances I've ever seen at a tech conference. But I also love the opening keynote by Dynatrace CEO John Van Siclen, who perfectly set the scene by talking about how we will be building and deploying as many apps in the next 3 years as we have in the last 40 years. And he also revealed that 80% of enterprises have already adopted microservices. And in the future, automation will be mandatory in a digital world where business outcomes take priority over everything. So this week we've heard Dynatrace customers that have shared their digital transformation story on here. But I also asked John to come on here and share the story behind Dynatrace too. And thankfully he said yes. So come with me all the way to Las Vegas for one last time so we can talk with Dynatrace CEO John Van Siclen, who's going to share his story and much more. So I've spoken with Dynatrace customers such as Autodesk, Rack Room and Barbary over the last couple of days who've all shared their transformation stories on this podcast. But it occurred to me that we should be sharing Dynatrace's story too. So can I take you back in time to where the cloud was on the horizon and you faced with the realization that it could destroy your existing business model at the time if you didn't disrupt it yourself? Can you share that story with me?
Sure. We actually had a conversation about the cloud and would it or wouldn't it disrupt the business? Because the original business, what we now call our classic business, was run along really well, leader in the market. They were in the application performance monitoring, doing great, but there were some thoughts that maybe the cloud would disrupt. So I put our CTO and founder, and he brought a dozen of his best engineers, best product folks, architects, and they went off for 3 months to figure out would it or wouldn't it, and they came back, and I remember the meeting. We had a dinner before a 2-day meeting, and the two key architects were sitting right next to me, and so I asked them for a little preview, and they said, "Well, you may not like this, John, but we need to reinvent everything."
Wow.
Not a lick of the same code, I asked, and they said, "Nope, none. We're going to change the whole way we do it. Instead of doing things with a patented technology that was at the core of our classic flagship product, we're going to build an AI engine at the core." And this is before anybody's talking about AI, really.
I was going to say, that's a long time before.
And because we need to make it answer oriented, not force people to sift through data, but actually provide the answers, at their fingertips, in seconds, as opposed to them searching for hours or days trying to figure things out. So after it sounded pretty radical, but after a couple days of really discussing what the trends were technologically and where our existing architecture was going to break down, it was really clear that if we didn't do it, somebody was going to do it and do it to us. So we made the decision, let's go. And we immediately put 40 engineers on it. A year later was 120. And we brought the product to market about 5 years ago as a little skunk works, gave it a different name. 2 years later, we renamed it Dynatrace, made it our core flagship, and just drove it straight through the middle of our customer base. And today we're 87% of our recurring revenue is the new platform, and it's like the startup ate the company kind of thing. But it's where everybody else was trying to evolve their way. All our competitors evolved their way to the cloud, which worked for the early cloud market, but not for the for the highly dynamic web scale environments people are in today. We really have set ourselves back as the only company that can really handle the dynamic cloud world ahead.
It's such an amazing story because you really could have been the next, I don't know, Kodak, Blockbuster if you carried on building your future success on what you built your previous success on. So actually going out there and being brave enough and bold enough to make that choice. But what were your biggest challenges in that time, would you say?
Honestly, it was how are we going to mature a new platform without disturbing our core business, because the core business was still growing.
Yeah.
And so that's why, thinking about it as a skunk works, giving it a different name, giving it a different website, only casually mentioning it to existing customers. We phased it every year. We made a new move to get closer, educate the customers, start to get the sales organization educated, start to look for the new cloud projects in our existing customer base. So it was an evolution. And about 2 years ago, we said, okay, it's time. We got to run across, the chasm. Otherwise, we'll lose the customers in the process. So we put the pedal down, and that was our sort of a conversion program that we talk about. And we're now almost done with it. So it was really sort of balancing an existing customer base and then a transition to a new platform without stalling the business or actually cratering the business. I mean, there's been plenty of stories. I remember, I'm old enough to remember the Osborne story where they announced something new, it didn't work. Everybody waited for what was next, and the business cratered. So you really have to be careful with those transitions. I think we orchestrated it really well. It wasn't easy. I've been worrying about it for 4 years, so it's nice to be almost done with the worry.
Yeah, you must be. I mean, you've been on such an inspirational story. It's been on such an inspirational journey because, of course, last year you launched an IPO. I mean, what was that journey like, and what lessons did you learn from that? I'm sure there was more than a few.
Well, there was, with the new platform, it's lent itself now because it's in the mainstream of the cloud, marketplace, the digital transformation, market that's cloud first, and there's such a tremendous, demand for anything that can provide observability, into these these web scale dynamic Kubernetes orchestrated kinds of clouds. And so it's really catapulted the growth rate of the business and our confidence in continued sustainability of that growth rate that gave us the confidence to move the company into a public market, which is not, for the faint of heart. You really have to have sustainability to do it. It always looks nice and seems easy, but when you're planning your IPO, you really have to be confident. So there was a lot of preparation for it. There's a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure you're really ready on all vectors: sales, marketing, product, finance, everything. But we did that last summer, August 1st, 2019. It's been a great success. We've now been public. I've done 3 earnings calls. It's all we've beat and raised our numbers for those 3 quarters, which is great. And so it has been an exciting time for the company. I think from my standpoint, there really hasn't been a change in how we run the company. You have to set that up before you go do an IPO, and so you can stay focused on running the business at hand. The thing that has changed is I do spend a little bit more time with the new constituency, the financial community, which is probably a good 25% of my time now. But that's good. They have interesting perspectives. It's a different way of sort of looking at the company, at the company's opportunity, and it actually provides some insight that I take on board in helping to shape the future ahead for the business.
And in your keynote yesterday, you set the scene perfectly, delivering a serious message for businesses as you extended Kubernetes support. But for people that cannot attend, can you expand on why you think this is such a huge game changer for the market?
So the keynote yesterday, I focused on a couple things. One of them was automation, that IT resources are limited and they'll continue to be limited. In fact, more and more limited as the complexity of these dynamic cloud ecosystems continues to rise. Yeah. And so to it's not a nice to have. It's not really about efficiency and saving money. It's really about survival for the IT organizations. And we have a great opportunity to help enable that kind of automation at a advanced level, autonomous cloud kind of level, because of the granularity with which we sense the entire cloud, every moving piece 24/7. We understand what's good behavior and what's bad behavior. We automatically surface bad behavior with exact root cause so that humans can take action. And where we want to go with that is, instead of the humans taking action, why not have machines take the action if it's a repetitive item? And so it's a big idea. I think it's an inevitable movement in the market, and it's great to be a catalyst, for something, that big. We've even invested in some open source control plane kind of fabric that will allow customers to move this direction faster and faster. Part of that is you need the high fidelity information under the hood all the time. And it's getting, it's crazy how fast things are changing, how many new services, how many new releases of some of the key components, whether that's Docker frameworks, whether that's the Kubernetes orchestration environment that you mentioned. There's a lot of moving parts. And you really have to stay up to speed. One of the things we did in our transformation that sort of little known, but a really critical piece of our success has been when we thought through what we were going to need to do for the cloud and these ecosystems, how complex, we realized we were going to have to be able to update code for our customers hundreds of times a year, maybe thousands of times a year, because there's so many interdependencies in these complex stacks of software and infrastructure, et cetera, that we're going to have to keep up with everything. Yeah. And so we had to figure out a release program and how to get the updates out. And so we built a very sort of unique hybrid SaaS model, so we could handle our customers that wanted their data behind their firewall, as well as those who were okay with it in the cloud. We do 25 major releases a year. We do hundreds of minor releases, as I said. And that was a requirement for success here. So when we talk about, hey, we're bringing this new technology out, it's not just, hey, here it is, we're done, don't have to do a lot. It becomes part of a repertoire that's now in the hundreds of components that we manage, take care of, understand, auto-discover, in our system on a continuous basis.
And there's a lot of talk here about the digital transformation of everything, but of course also the other big theme is digital experiences, and experiences being more important than the product or even services on many occasions. And in yesterday's keynotes, I was struck by the Carnival Corporation keynote and how CIO Greg Sullivan knows more about that challenge than most, with over 33,000 IoT devices and 22,000 custom metrics. And he did stress the importance of being proactive, because they simply don't have the time to be reactive anymore. I mean, do you think that is something that every business and every industry is now facing?
Every industry, every company that's digitally transforming and believes that software will be a critical part of their success in the future, which is pretty much every major corporation, at least the ones that will survive. Absolutely, it's an absolute requirement. The way these clouds are built, it's no longer this app runs on this hardware that runs, that's connected via this network. All the services are software and they're all shared. So any ripple in one place can ripple through an entire stack of applications, whether that's an airline, whether that's a cruise line, whether that's a bank, et cetera. So you really have to have situational awareness across a very wide landscape, and something that is always sensing the degradations so you can react before users are impacted. We're now moving to the point where some of this stuff is being predictive analytics and that we're applying. And in fact, you'll hear about some of that today on the keynotes this morning of some of the directions we're headed in that regard. So, the demand from users, their tolerance for glitches is almost zero. And as each generation comes into the business world, the tolerance is going down and down and down, right? They just expect tech to work. And so it's super important that to really provide exceptional experiences, that the software that's behind the scenes, running these experiences, whether it's something in your face in a browser or a kiosk or whatever, or whether it's something behind the scenes like the baggage claim app that you're going to need to run flawlessly today when you return home. Either way, every journey of every person has to be perfect.
And the message I took away from Perform this year was that this unified data model combined with AI and automation is going to be required to stay ahead in a world where being great is no longer good enough. But would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, the idea that first of all, and concept of an AI engine. And when we talk about one, this isn't a black box. We built it so it was explainable. And it's really important because no tech person will trust a black box. They need to see how it's working, like a breadcrumb trail of how did it get here. So then they can build a trust over time that allows them to change the way they work. And every customer goes through it. In fact, a number of them talked about that, right? Yeah. That at first it was like, no way, does this really work? And then they started to try it, and lo and behold, better than the humans. So perfect augmentation. Now, AI only works well if the data coming in is at the right fidelity, has a semantic model that's rich, that allows the AI engine to actually be precise. And so part of the secret of Dynatrace isn't just the AI engine. It isn't just the high fidelity data. It's not just the automatic collection continuously of the data. It's actually all of that together. People try to break it up and say, oh, I really like this, or I really like that, or that really doesn't. You need it all. Yeah. And that's the brilliance of that development team 5 years ago, was thinking through all the pieces, how they had to come together in order to provide something that seems so simple, answers as opposed to more data, really precise answers, but it's really a game changer. And it really, you heard from the customers, you talked to the customers, it is a really powerfully different platform that enables these resource-strapped IT organizations to actually get ahead, provide more business value, innovate faster, and in the end compete more effectively, in their markets, like Carnival was talking about, in theirs.
So what are the key messages that you want people to go home with from Perform 2020, whether that be here at the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas or streaming it online or following it on social media? What's those key messages you want to send?
Well, the theme that we sort of have built into the conference is transformation. And it's not just digital transformation, although we definitely help companies with their confidence, with the speed, with the ease of all of those, repeatability of that, because it's not a one-time thing, it's an ongoing program now for these corporations. But it's also to empower the IT organizations to transform. Yeah. Because many of them are trying to do digital transformation without evolving their organizations. They're still stovepiped between here are our development guys, here's our test people, here's our production people, here's our user experience people. There's no lingua franca. There's no source of truth. Everybody has their own tools. They're all sort of banging away at from different angles. And it's that the teamwork and collaboration just doesn't work. So it really takes a top-down view to reorganize these stovepipes, into teams and into squads in order to really attack this opportunity ahead. And those companies that are successful, you talk to all of them, they've all made the cultural changes that are required under the hood. The ones that are still stovepiped, they just can't succeed in the cloud. So we're trying to help our customers understand it, make sure the ones that are successful tell their stories, the ones that are still struggling to, get that kind of cultural evolution to happen, or revolution that's needed under the hood. I give them the confidence they can do it, and that Dynatrace as a platform can really be something special in that transformation process.
And finally then, what are you going to be thinking about on that plane ride home at the end of Perform 2020, and what excites you about the future? I'm curious to get into your mindset when you're going to be sat on that plane ride home.
Well, these events are always culminations of things, so the first thing I'm going to do is go phew, but no, it's also a launching point. So we look at this not as a sort of the culmination of 2019. We look at this as the kickoff of 2020. And in a lot of ways, as I said in my keynote yesterday, it's a kickoff of a new decade.
Yeah.
So our horizon is a little bit further out than we might normally do when we're talking about the future. But I think that's important because everybody in that room is thinking not just about the next year. They understand, they might be thinking 3 years or 5 years out. And I think what excites me the most is that we really, I truly believe to my toes, I wouldn't be at Dynatrace for the last 12 years as a CEO, if I didn't believe it, that we have an opportunity to change the way the world works. Those folks in that room are sort of the key practitioners and visionaries for their companies, digital transformation, how the cloud will work for them, how the applications and workloads will be built and applied, how customer experience will be managed and expectations exceeded. So they're in the driver's seat of this whole new world of software everywhere, and we believe we can be an amazing enabler for that transformation, unique actually in the market, and we just get excited about trying to help more and more companies, sort of suspend disbelief long enough, as I say, that maybe we are different and maybe we really can do something special. And once they take a look under the hood and they try it out, in a proof of concept, the vast majority of them go, "This is awesome. Let's get going."
Well, I am conscious you're going to have to dash and go on stage in a minute for the final keynotes, but more than anything, just a big thank you for taking the time to come and speak with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
John is just a great guy, so a big thank you to him for both hosting me here in Vegas and also for agreeing to speak with me on this podcast. And as I prepare to leave Las Vegas and head on the plane back home to the UK, my big 3 takeaways from Dynatrace Perform 2020 is that automation will be mandatory, and it's all about business outcomes. And finally, change won't work without transformation. But more than anything, I'm leaving Las Vegas today with great memories of an open-minded community that all gathered here to listen to each other's challenges, share stories, and help each other out. Now, sure, I know that sounds cheesy, but I've spoken with 4 different companies whose passion for that was evident, and most importantly, in a genuine way. And I find that quite heartwarming because I always say at the end of every podcast that technology works best when it brings people together. And I think that is the perfect point to leave you all with. So as I hop on the plane back to the UK, all that's left for me to say is a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.